Hey everybody! So it's been about 3 weeks since I posted a video to this channel, and I wanted to talk about my life of audio engineering, reintroduce myself to this audience of 28,200 plus subscribers and counting. It's important that you know who is in front of the camera, and it's important that you know what my experience level is, why I started this channel. It matters to a lot of you guys out there. So, you know, in future videos, I'll reference this one. First of all, I am, not for this video, but I'm affiliated with Native Instruments, SE Electronics, with Acoustica Audio, Isotope, which is a part of Native Instruments, and trying to think if there's any more, but Blue Cat Audio. Actually, they were the very first people. They don't sponsor videos, but they send licenses. That's what all these companies do. iCare Multimedia actually sent me the thing that this camera's on. It's important to understand that there's any conflicts of interest. I don't think I'm going to be talking about any of those companies in this video, but in the future I will be introducing myself. Maybe what I'll do is just put the logos like on the bottom. But anyway, I wanted to talk about my audio engineering journey, and this began in childhood. This began during, I believe it was Christmas or a birthday, where I received a General Electric radio with a built-in little condenser microphone with an audio cassette recorder, and from that moment on, I was recording things off the radio. I was recording my own voice. I thought it was the coolest thing to be able to record something and then play it back. Yes, my dad and my grandfather, they both had videotape recorders, and I always thought that was cool. Anybody who was around in that time period, there was these camcorders that were set up in the stores, and then they had the video feed going live to all these different TVs, so you could see your face on like 16 different TVs at the same time, which was pretty interesting. So, but to have my own recording device, and make little skits. I used to do like Alvin and the Chipmunks, and there was a way that I could hold the pause button on the radio, the recorder, and it would slow down the tape so that when it was recording and then play back, it was higher pitched. So I would record my normal voice as Dave, and then my other, the Chipmunk voice as Alvin or Simon or Theodore, and that was like one of my earlier skits. And I had some pretty raunchy stuff, even for a little kid. And by the way, those tapes eventually got taken away by my parents, and I have no idea where they are, and I'm kind of glad. Hopefully they were destroyed at some point or thrown in the garbage, because there was probably stuff on there that I really didn't want anybody to hear. Even in this day and age. Even though I was a little kid, it's like people don't care. It's like, Anyway, fast forward to about the year 1997, 1998, there was a internet radio show. That's what they were called back then. Apple actually created the word podcast, but they were called internet radio shows, and they were encoded typically with Real Media or Real Player. I remember the Real Player G2. That was a big deal back then. But specifically, there was a show called Pointless Audio, created by a guy named Kevin Pereira, I believe his name was, who later on actually went to work for a company called G4. He also worked on the Game Show Network. I think he may have he does a podcast now called Pointless. But back then, he was an inspiration. I used to be a user of a website called Shack News, because at the time there was a very popular game called Quake, released around the year 1996, 1997. I was really into that. I knew about Shack News, and Pointless Audio was talked about a lot because he would talk about Quake in his earlier episodes. I believe you can even find Pointless Audio recordings here on YouTube for those that are curious. But that inspired me to start my own internet radio show with my friends, And at that point is when I learned all about different things like, sample rates. And I screwed up in the beginning. I recorded at 8,000 hertz or 8 kilohertz instead of CD quality. I was using the original Microsoft Wave Editor or whatever it's called, where you could only record like up to a minute of audio, and then you could edit that, but it was really hard to see the little waveform, so you had to be like really precise with your mouse. Eventually, I obtained a copy of what was then called Cool Edit Pro. Later that became Adobe Audition, and I think even to this day it is Adobe Audition. But Cool Edit Pro opened up a world of possibilities for creating these internet radio shows, which again featured little skits in it, such as an echo effect inside of a woman's specific body part. There was an angry guy who would make a lot of appearances on the show. There was just all kind, and of course we would talk about the news of the day and giving our opinions on it. And the presentation wasn't that great. I still have these on CD. I obviously also transferred them into back then it was Monkeys Audio, which I think still exists in some way, shape, or form. But Monkeys Audio, lossless compression. Back in the day, I had probably compressed to MP3s in the early days. It didn't really matter that much because, again, I had recorded accidentally at 8 kilohertz. Many mistakes were made in the early days of my career, as I'm sure you guys is the same for you as well. But I'll tell you, I wish I would have had this level of information accessible to me in those early days so I could avoid mistakes. And in a way, that's why I started this channel. Also, so I was not annoying my customers, clients, whatever you want to call them, with technical information. I was boring people. I had to remember my role as the sound engineer was to make their job easier and not to get them to get musicians or whoever the talent is distracted with technical details. So fast forward to, I guess, college and doing videography and photography and filmmaking with actual, I guess it was 16 millimeter film. Maybe it was 8 millimeter. But either way, we were, I was very particular about recording good quality audio. And, whether that was using the shotgun mics on the boom poles, or we didn't really have wireless lavs at my college because it was still pretty expensive back then. Or maybe the college was just being cheap. But we had, handheld microphones. We had an SM7. I think they had the 7A, maybe even just the regular old 7. But they had a SM7, which I remembered from the movie Psycho 4, the woman using that microphone. And the minute that I saw that the college had that, I was like, oh, I have to record with this. Because I knew it was like, a radio quality microphone. The best microphone I had recorded up to that point was a Sennheiser 421 Mark II, I believe. That was what my high school had. Oh, I forgot the high school stuff. So the high school is where I really cut my teeth on learning about video and audio. And man, it actually made me bored the first 2 years of college. I almost quit because of that, because I was like, I wasn't learning anything. In retrospect, I probably should have just went to a trade school straight out of high school and learned a lot more hands-on quicker and tried to get a job in industry, back then, because jobs were more plentiful back. I'm not going to say in what year, but they were more plentiful back in the day than they are, especially nowadays. But even back when I first graduated from college, it was tough to get a job. Anyway, going back to college, all right, I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe the phone overheated. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's continue without using the fancy blurring effect. I'll have to remember that in the future. Maybe there's like a 5-minute limit. I don't know. Anyway, I forgot to mention. So here's the radio. Now, this is not the actual radio I used as a kid. This is one from my grandparents, but this is a cool little Panasonic radio. It doesn't have a cassette player. No, it doesn't. But this is probably from the, I'm gonna say either early '80s, maybe mid '70s. I bet you it still works. So after college, I think it was even the year that I graduated, I was asked to record his son's band. And I was like, well, I haven't recorded music like ever, like other than acoustic guitar, and obviously a lot of voices and vocals. But I did record my drums maybe like a little bit, but it was with these like headset microphones and with a Radio Shack 3-way splitter going into a camcorder. Nothing like with a mixing board, nothing with XLR microphones, nothing, with that level of detail. So what I told him, I don't know if it was that time or the second time around, but I said, I'll try, but I can't guarantee it's going to sound good. But they took a chance on me, and it actually turned out okay. Then about, I want to say a year and a half later is when I started recording the same guy's album. Maybe it was 2 years later. Anyway, they were like, hey, he's gonna do a whole album. What you want? Are you interested in doing? I said, heck yeah. So it was about a 3 or 4 month process. Not every single day, but so about 4 months of recording, and then I think we spent a month mixing and mastering it. And I even said, hey, like, you gonna get somebody else to master this? They're like, nah, because what had happened in the past is they would get these good mixes and then have somebody else master it, and the mastering engineer would really screw it up. So they were like, let's just do everything in-house. We're gonna press 1,000 CDs. I don't think he did vinyl at that point. But that's really where I learned my ropes with recording. Let's see, I did drums, I did acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass, cello, violin, ukulele, I think, or that might have been the second album. Harmonica. Trying to think of anything else, but essentially, because they knew that I was new, that we spent time auditioning microphones, which means you try different microphones for different instruments, and you try different positions for those microphones. But this is also where, and man, I don't know where that book went, but it was like the home studio handbook or something like that. And it taught like all these different concepts. And I read that book cover to cover multiple times, making sure that I fully understood the mission, understood how to do this the best way I possibly could. And I would say that it was a pretty darn good album. Now, the only thing is I did not have, and this is why I stress it so much on this channel, I did not have proper monitoring. The monitors we had were good, they were just too bright, and that resulted in dull mixes. And it wasn't until the very first thing we did for the second album, I said I would like to get this new, at the time, software system, hardware hybrid system called ARC. I think it's called Advanced Room Correction or something like that, from IK Multimedia. It was like $600 at the time. Now what we did, because at the time there was a cross grade thing, that's what IK did. So the cross grade price was like $200 cheaper, maybe even $300. I forget what it was, but it was like, hey, let's buy their cheapest plugin or their cheapest whatever, and then get the cross grade. So that's what we did. In fact, my IK Multimedia username is still related to that studio to this day, because that's where all my licenses are. I didn't want to lose that ARC license. But yeah, ARC was a big revelation because it didn't fully like dull down those monitors, but it got them to a much better place. And then it, basically we didn't have to, play this game of listening because I didn't even know to do it. We pretty much just turned the album in based off of like computer speakers and the ones hooked into the studio control room, and that was it. The second album we listened in the cars, we listened in the living room, we listened on the computer speakers, we listened on a phone. So we made sure the mixes translated. And in fact, mixing here on these speakers that I'm familiar with, those mixes that I started here were probably the better sounding mixes than when I started the mixes in the studio, because again, the monitors were still a little bit on the bright side. I finally got that stuff dialed down because it really had to do more with room reflections. I didn't have the filters on the speakers set up properly. They really shouldn't have been against the wall. But I mean, that's nothing I can do about that, really. I mean, it's soffit mounting. I didn't know anything about that at the time. So ignorance is bliss. Ignorance, So I know now to monitor better. In fact, nowadays I actually use speaker and room simulation software, and I use headphones primarily for music mixing. Now for regular stuff, I still just use these with ARC3. So I'm still a fan of ARC. In fact, I got to recalibrate these. It's been many years since I calibrated these. They may be out of shape at the time. I'm very big on calibration, by the way. So when I do photography and video, I have my monitors calibrated to the sRGB standard. For video, it's the REC 2020 or the REC 709 standard, using different techniques, blue only, and then there's like another one I can't remember the name of, but to get, this is what I'm like doing, like professional level, like bigger budget stuff. For my own stuff, I don't use all that. I just use the regular computer monitor, it's calibrated to sRGB, which is close enough to 709 that I don't even, REC 709, I don't even really care about it. But I'm very big on calibration. I'm very big on ensuring the bell curve is attended to, because you're not always going to, no matter where you mix, if the speakers are bad, it's going to sound bad. And that's actually something that SonarWorks was trying to address with their Sound ID system, which unfortunately hasn't caught on like it could have, because that could have solved a lot of issues where, like the way people's ears are shaped, the way that their listening preferences, because some of us like, brighter, some of us like warmer, or to what I call duller. So, Sound ID takes care of all that and blends all that data together and spits out a calibrated result that ideally would make it where we're hearing what the artist and the producers and all that intended. But unfortunately, Sound ID still hasn't fully caught on like it probably should have. Anyway, I digress on that one. I guess what I'm here to say is my audio journey's been interesting. I wish by now I would have worked with some famous people. Haven't got to that point yet. I would love to one day lend my talents and my skills to popular music, but just haven't had the opportunities yet. I've been very fortunate with this channel because of you guys. Being able to attend the AES shows, been able to get the different companies contacting me, wanting to try out their new software, sometimes their new hardware. It's been an interesting, what has it been, 14 years now that Real Home Recording's been around? Yeah, in fact, it was this month. So I guess it's apropos that I recorded this video talking about my audio journey so far. And like I said, that turned off. Like I said, let me turn it back on, since the depth of field is is wider. I got to remember to turn the air conditioner back on too. I didn't want that turning on, but during this very important video. But man, we now live in a time of Dolby Atmos mixing. I mean, 5.1 is so passe compared to Dolby Atmos. And what is that, like 21 different speakers or something? I don't even know. Like it's insane. Which, by the way, you can get ARC calibrated IK multimedia iLoud speakers for a Dolby Atmos setup. That exists now. That is crazy to me, and I think it's like under $10,000 too. I think Atmos is going to be like 3D movies where, yeah, it's good for Hollywood. Yeah, it might be good for like the AC/DCs and the Pink Floyds of the world, where they know they're going to sell a lot of albums. Maybe Taylor Swift does a Dolby Atmos mix, but like, stereo's here to stay. And in fact, I was just talking to somebody about this. Just like how I like to start mixes out in mono, because it helps you hear frequency clashes a lot easier. And this is actually advice I got from engineers who used to start mixes in mono when stereo was a brand new thing and they didn't really know what to do with it. So that, obviously they would do their mixes in mono and it would sound phenomenal. One speaker. So when I mix in mono, I mean like one speaker, not two speakers where it's two different things. No, one speaker is putting out the information and I'm listening and I'm like, okay, does this sound good? I also don't like to use reverb and delay until later on in the mix. I get it sounding good. I get the audio, I get the compression, I get the equalization sounding good together, and then at that point I start adding the reverbs, the delays. I start spreading things around in the stereo panning. And, you learn a lot of things just from experience. And I guess I'm going to wrap this video up to say, I can tell you about the best drinks, the best food, but until you experience that for yourself, you won't truly understand. And it's the same with audio engineering. It's the same with photography. I can teach you about all the mistakes to avoid so that you save time and possibly even save money. But I can't take your hands and put them on the mouse, put them on the keyboard. I can't put your ears in front of the speakers, or I can't put the headphones on your ears and have you guys try this stuff out for yourself. It's all up to you, whether you want to be, we're always trying to strive for better. I don't want to say the best. The best is the wrong word to use. We're always trying to improve and learn from our mistakes, learn from our experience, not just mistakes, but what works well is too. What is going to improve what was already recorded, and in some cases, what was recorded is already good enough. My God, I wish I had the stuff that I have printed out on the wall. The stuff I have printed out on the wall, I will use while I record, because this stuff, it just makes the mixing job easier. I know what I want something to sound like. Those drums going through the API 5500, or the Trident A range, or even the music cue. I know I'm forgetting some of the also a kick drum going through a Pultec EQ. I would love to have that on the front end, recording before the stuff hits the converters. It would save me so much time. Yeah, my mix would start coming together before I left the finger. Just don't have the money. I don't have the. It's not necessarily just the money. It's the. I can't justify it, because unfortunately, music has been devalued, and it sucks saying that, but it's the truth. But I still care. I still care about the quality, because to me, like one of my next big projects. So I transferred all my family's home videos, their VHS tapes, their Sony 8mm and high 8. I think I even had some digital 8s in there. Yeah, for my sister. So I transferred all these tapes, mini DV also. I transferred all these tapes as best I could. And they are now in a, first of all, they're in a playable format on Blu-ray disc, and they're in an archive format because I knew at the time I do not want to recapture all these files. So the audio levels were good, broadcast level right around between 20 and negative 12 decibels. Very, very rarely going above that. And the actual video itself, I do have to recapture some of the high 8s because I was using a different capture card at the time. So that's on the agenda in the future. Anyway, my next big project, I'm going to be scanning film and slide negatives. And I need to make sure, again, my monitor's calibrated. I want to make sure the best, I get, quote unquote, the best quality I can within my budget. I'd like to have that old Nikon CoolScan that cost $10,000 that my college had. I think it was a CoolScan 9000. So I scanned some of my own photos with that because the thing was sitting there collecting dust. But now I'm going to go through film negatives. I could scan the prints. I may as well do that because the scanner I have sitting right here is pretty darn good. I just had to remember to change it from document to photo auto exposure because I just scanned a bunch of pictures, and I did adjust the settings manually for each one, but it could have saved me some time probably. But yeah, I want all this stuff saved, all this stuff digitized. It's important to me, and it's important that I share my experience because what I learned from places like Gearspace and KBR Forum, I learned from all other sound engineers. So, and obviously there's money to be had. Audio is such a niche though that there's not a lot of money in talking about audio. That's why I have another channel where I talk about more universal topics. But yeah, for now, that's pretty much all I wanted to say about that. My audio journey continues. I really need to get back into mixing. It's been a while since I've mixed a piece of music. So my next plan is to do the 5 plugins, 1 mix series. Maybe it'll be 6 plugins, maybe it'll be 7. But I really want to make it apparent that no, you don't have to drop thousands of dollars in software. Now, I do recommend getting the best speakers you can afford. I really think the IK Multimedia iLouds are pretty darn good. But I've heard good things about the Kali's or the Kali's, Kali. And then there's another company I'm missing out. But anyway, money with audio travels a lot better than it used to. And I would say take advantage of that. In fact, the microphone built into this camera is pretty darn good for what it is. I could have hooked this bad boy in, but chose not to. I not directly into this camera, but I could have hooked it into the ID14 over here and then synced the audio. I had to do a clap for sync. In fact, maybe I should do that right now because there's been issues with the audio sync and this. The Samsung did a pretty good job. The Pixel needs some work. The Pixel, I would love to have constant frame rate. It's not doing that though. The S9 does it though. So maybe I'll use the S9 in the future. Anyway, I'm way off topic. Thank you for subscribing to Real Home Recording. And I'm looking forward to having a lot more videos in the future. Would you guys be opposed to me releasing 2 videos a day, maybe even 3? Let me know in the comments. Let me know part of your audio journey. When did you get started? Was it in high school? Was it when you were a kid like me? Was it when, I don't know, you got bored one day and said, I'm a musician, and I don't like the way that all the audio engineers are manipulating my music, and I want to be. I have a better ear than them. Let me know in the comments. If not, then just at least give the video a thumbs up. I appreciate it. Bye.